Namaste. Great morning, everyone. I'm going to read a little bit from the Kundalini, Hell to Heaven. This one is on energy rushes and anxiety, guru, and balance. Now, this was written, sent in by somebody that had been worked with. And so we'll just go ahead and get into it. This is some of the things that take place when one is in the midst of a Kundalini awakening. Okay. This is by Kali Anand from Tennessee. After my Kundalini awakening, I was lucky enough to find Ganga Karmakar through an internet site called KundaliniSupport.com, created by Bob Boyd. She had done an interview with him that was not only strikingly moving in its own right, but immediately drew me in with connection to her. Unlike anything I had done before, I packed a bag before calling her and began the process of finding a flight from Nashville to Seattle that very day, unbeknownst to my husband. Upon speaking with her and communicating my experiences, she was ready with explanation and compassion. When I told her I needed immediate sanctuary, support, and counsel, she told me to come, that she would pick me up at the airport and pick up an extra bed along the way. Of course, I'm getting way ahead of myself. My name is Kali Anand, and I'm in the process of writing my doctoral dissertation in psychology, which she did go forward to complete. Okay, so now she is a practicing psychologist. Up to my awakening, I was working at a university counseling center as a practicum student and a psychiatric hospital, and finishing my graduate studies at Tennessee State University in Nashville. I have been meditating since 1980, sometimes in the earlier years, hours at a time, looking to God for guidance and to truth, and experiencing bliss and love for people and life. Even though I had been experiencing a blissful energetic state since the 1980s, with experiences of heat up the back and orgasmic feelings in front that felt like blankets of the sweetest and most joyous love for God, gold light around my body, and movements in my forehead and the top of my head in meditation, I never really attributed any of this to a Kundalini awakening or rising. I have traveled extensively on service and spiritual trips, such as to Nepal and Peru, always with God as a focus. Yet, I was the focus of experiencing and sharing this love and bliss. It gave me extreme pleasure, energy, happiness, and spiritual focus on others, and of course myself, and on my own life. In June 2002, my husband and I visited family in Texas, continuing on to Santa Fe, New Mexico, for my husband's business concerns as a marketing consultant. On a stopover in Carlsbad, New Mexico, after reading my favorite verses from the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu, while my husband relaxed in the whirlpool at the hotel, we went to dinner. It was at this time, during the meal, that I began to feel stomach pains, and I went to the ladies' room to actually lie on my stomach for a few minutes. The pain resolved, and once seated back at the table, I heard a roaring sound, like the wind, whoosh, and the heat traveled immediately up my back and over my head. At this time, I recognized the sensation from previous experiences in meditation, but nothing as fast and as potent as this. Initially, in Carlsbad, there were no immediate changes, but once we arrived in Santa Fe, there were new events waiting me at 7,000 feet and definitive changes. The next part of this continuing arduous journey had begun, which I did not know then or even fathom. The first night, in the room in Santa Fe, again, I experienced the heat up the spine, but this time with clamoring and energy rushes up and through my head like electronic circuits were firing. I was left shivering beside my husband on the bed as he lay sound asleep. Luckily, I was able to fall asleep that night. The next day, my husband and I made our way around Santa Fe, but I began to experience unusual and short bouts of mild anxiousness and some other feeling, possibly a slight dread. All of this would come and go and would be quite mild. The second night, I was unable to eat or sleep. Food was definitely not palatable to me, and the night brought with it another heated episode of discomfort and an aftermath of shivering. Needless to say, my husband was concerned, but I couldn't figure out what was going on. On our way back to Nashville, I would experience minute feelings of anxiousness, as if something immediate to be concerned with. We stayed at my family's house again for overnight, and that night brought with it another difficult episode. I spent it alone lying on the living room floor. I was able to sleep in the early morning hours, and I was able to eat, but very lightly. Upon returning to Nashville, I had nightly energy surges and no sleep for several days. Also, even though I was now eating, I was losing weight rapidly. I finally told my husband I probably needed to go to an emergency room, but he couldn't figure out what we would tell them. So I decided to go to the doctor that same day with a book on Kundalini. I knew what was going on, but had no idea how to handle the immensity of the energy or any of the other symptoms taking place. And intuitively, I knew I needed guidance immediately. The doctor took note of the book, stating he had heard of Kundalini, but that's as far as he went. He noted I was hot, noted the weight loss, the lack of sleep, so he suggested a thyroid panel, which is normal to do, and prescribed Ambien for sleep, which I used in 3 milligram, 5 milligram, and 10 milligram increments, and it was a blessing. But now I don't need it. The best thing that came about from the appointment was the Ambien that gave me needed sleep over the following weeks, because my mind felt like it was turned on 24 hours a day with vibrating energy. Meanwhile, I passed my orals for my doctorate, finished my last summer course, and luckily the process seemed to give me respite on the occasions I needed it. There were other Kundalini symptoms such as adrenaline rushes, some big, some small, as if my whole physical and mental self was in dire straits, even though I might just be reading a book, and personal fears coming right up in my face that I had to look at. Also, my head had tingling all over it, and my forehead felt heavy. These symptoms are still around in varying degrees, and although very uncomfortable to deal with at times, I have coping truths to work with now, and my bliss has made numerous returns, usually when I think this is just too much. Coping truths are my name for the treasures I have received from Ganga and continue to receive. It seems strange, but the initial stages, I could not find solace in my spiritual practices, not wanting to even venture there, just holding on to God and my inner guru through the rough nights. But since then, this has changed enormously. Through all of this, I started to visit Bob Boyd's site regularly, hoping and praying that somewhere out there I could find someone for guidance. I emailed him some of my thoughts, and he responded, but it wasn't until I read Ganga's story an interview that I knew I had found my sought guru. This is where I began my story. Since being with Ganga, I have found myself in the presence of someone with great compassion, wisdom, strength, discernment, and love. She gives without expectation, only to help others. She is an enlightened one, not able to sit on the sidelines, but actively in center ring. One by one, she is willing to help others through this powerful awakening. She is tireless in her willpower in helping others through their unique journeys of life towards self-realization. I have decided it is important to put down the insights she has given me, and although one must go through this process alone in terms of the awakening symptoms, one should not be alone without guidance or a teacher, guru. These are some of her words verbatim from me to you that have helped me unbelievably through this rite of sacred passage. When the fear comes up, don't label it fear or panic. See it as simply moving energy. Sit where you are, do relaxed breathing, and just watch it, as in Vipassana. Bring yourself back to now. When the mind starts going, stop. Do something physical, or do the mantra Om. Do not chase and cling after the mental stuff ever. You are working with consciousness, not body pathways. What you are looking at is mind play that has created conditionings and your belief systems. Fears in the end are empty in nature. They will take you on a merry chase and keep you in bondage. Don't hang on to fears. Drop them. Source is not found within thinking. All actions should be done in focused awareness of the moment. The awakening is not something you are battling. That's an absolute wrong stance to take. When you battle back, you are feeding it. Fear feeds it. You are paying attention to it. And then emotions come into play. Breathing is used to relax. Go into the breath. It will give you a cushion, help you to look at it objectively. Once centered and able to witness it, you can confront conditions and fears as illusion and not solid. Go into the heart of it and see it is not valid. If you are not on the path of ego, surrender and the universe will work with you. Fear arises when you are not surrendering the ego, when you are actively attempting to control. There is nothing to fear as everything comes from Source. The illusion is that negativity has power, but it only has power because you give attention to it. Negativity is in fact empty. Everything in nature is empty, and you must go beyond the intellect. Surrender, acceptance, and trust faith, rather than clinging, pushing, holding, and grasping, are imperative. Remember, all you will feel and experience while going through your awakening is transient, the roughest times and the most blissful. And remember, true power is in loving and giving bhakti. Fear of completion, self-realization is a normal vacillation. Eventually, you will face the fear and walk through it for liberation. I will also add some of her email responses to me that have been invaluable to me back in Nashville. She says, what do you do when the mind questions what to think if it is emptying out and frightened of not having anything to think? Let it go, okay? When thought ends, there is simply peace that remains. What is left is the unproductive mind drama. The ability to think is not lost, so simply let go. Is this because the slowdown of the mind And does one just surrender to it? Yes. It is once again a justification of not letting go and surrendering into the process. The thing that's so difficult is the transient changes in consciousness. There seems to be consistent movement and change. Well, this world is consistently transient and in flux. When entering the absolute, then the stabilization will occur and remain. Source is unchanging within. That is your stability. I have identified some of the unpleasant aspects of the cleansing that continue in a circular fashion and change the energy flow. They seem to be universal fears, archetypical, and I ask, how do I approach them in inquiry? As thoughts with no power? Just go to the moment and breathe, face them with inquiry alone to unmask them? So I'm going to read that again. I have identified some of the unpleasant aspects of the cleansing that continue in circular fashion and change the energy flow. They seem to be universal fears, archetypical, and I ask, how do I approach them in inquiry? Do I approach them as thoughts with no power? Just go into the moment and breathe? Face them with inquiry alone to unmask them? Go to the heart of them. Look at them square in the face, then dismantle it. Well, even though you know what's going on, you still have the tendency to feel anxiety, which I have stopped using as a label. And this change in energy is very hard to deal with. It's like being on a roller coaster with no idea where the next drop will be. I know you've spoken with me on this before, yet your communications are strong, continual pillars and beacons through this. I am grateful. Once again, go into the breath, use Vipassana. Vipassana is sitting there and witnessing what is taking place, witnessing, watching. See the energy change and let it release. See the mental dramas by stepping back and simply witness them. Don't get drawn into the drama of it. Then go to the core of it, dismantle it through inquiry or neti reasoning. Neti means not this, not this, not this. If it's something that's ever changing, coming and going, and it's not permanent, unchanging, eternal in nature, then it's not valid. Then it's an illusion of mind, a maya happening. Eventually, it will be like a light switch being thrown. It will dismantle and be gone. Excuse me. I sometimes seem to be caught up in the awakening itself and not the goal of realization of God, bliss, and love, and surrender. So I continue my practice toward remembrance, which brings bliss at times, and this will become all-encompassing, not an intellectualization, but heart-centered. Don't focus on completion. It's already here, but only covered over. Work on uncovering by seeing through the illusions playing out. Stay heart-centered. Keep working within the bhakti of surrendering in love to the universe. Do Om That I Am mantra. Well, Ganga enabled me to understand what was happening to me, and with just that, I was able to find some inkling of stability amidst my panic. She gave me breathing practices and walking meditation, and just her presence and voice were stabilizing lights. She started me on a proper diet, and I began to gain weight and started to be able to sleep. The most important thing was I began to feel moments of bliss towards the ultimate sacred goal of realization. Her Sunday satsang gave me the opportunity of meeting others going through this and to see her lovingly work with each unique individual on their path. Balance was possible, even through the roughest of experiences. I will be traveling with my teacher to India next month and feel grateful I am able to do so. Thank you and love to you, my dear teacher. So that is one of the people that came to be worked with. There are a number of testimonials of people and what they experienced, as well as so many more about, what is the levels and layers of consciousness and practices that one can do, things that aid in awakening and things that to avoid. So anyway, it's from the book Kundalini from Hell to Heaven. So I hope you've enjoyed the reading. I am going to leave this here for now. Namaste. Have a wonderful day, everyone.